Hello, everyone, and welcome to the W2 Amigos podcast, where we talk about passive investing, real estate, and all of the money moves that you can make while working your W2 so you can establish your financial freedom. Here to talk to you about the podcast, share a little bit more, your co-hosts, and of course, amigos, Nick Coulter and Xavier Marin. X-Man, how are you doing on this wonderful Thursday evening?
Doing great, man. Winter is coming. Tomorrow is going to be a nice chilly 18 degrees outside with a high of 32. And last weekend, I was actually out in Orlando at a multifamily conference. It was a nice 85 degrees. So it's going to be a long winter, man.
Dude, I shouldn't complain because it's going to be like 63 degrees as a high tomorrow.
Sounds like a good best weather kind of day, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Had a good corporate visit at the W2 this last week. I have an inspection coming up for a property I'm under contract with. So that's basically really it. Nothing crazy. We will hopefully have our Airbnb listing live by the time we make our next recording. The viewers will be able to check it out then, maybe drop it a heart to support me. X will be able to see it as it's being made because he is my feedback partner, my confidant. So yeah, really excited to get that done. I'm not going to lie, the last 2 weeks I've been extremely anxious because that $9,700 mortgage is looming over my head like a ton of bricks coming on the 1st of January. But yeah, hopefully we get it live. We get some bookings in there and it's not that big of a concern.
It's a great way to welcome up the new year, right? Happy New Year. Pay me $9,700.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I'm super jazzed, man. We had a great episode recording today, and obviously you'll kind of kick it off with who we talked to.
So today we talked to Omid, the rad investor, family guy, businessman, real estate investor, fitness geek. You know, when you see him on social media, you follow him. He's in Orange Theory every single day, waking up like at 4:30 in the morning. And he kind of walked us through a little bit of his journey, you know, working his W-2 for 18 years and ultimately was able to retire out of his W-2 due to short-term rentals. So, yeah, pretty cool story. Nick, what'd you take away from the episode?
So I think for me personally, the thing I really enjoyed, Omid walks us through the balance of life and how he started it waking up at 5:30 to be an excellent employee. And then it turned into 4:30 to be an excellent employee and a great husband and father. And also then start his real estate business. And then it was 3:30 to do all those same things because the real estate business grew until it was unsustainable. And he made a decision to leave the W-2. Not necessarily because he hated it, because he really loved it and he was doing very well financially at it, but more so to create balance in his life and not neglect the relationships that he knew he was going to carry for the rest of his life, being his wife and his kids. So I think that was super great, and a discussion I will have to have eventually with myself years down the line. You as well, X. So I think it was really cool to watch Omid go through it. That and the fact the guy is just like one of the greatest balls of energy to talk to I've ever seen in my entire life. Met him a couple times now. Like, he is 10 out of 10. I love that guy. But what about you? What did you take away?
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, he's a great guy to be around. Great energy. So one of the biggest things to take away from him is he talks about how he did a lot of pivoting during the real estate journey. He talks about starting off house hacking, flipping in-state, flipping out-state, apartment investing, then long-term, out-of-state, long-term, like burying as well, and then ultimately found his niche of short-term rentals. So it was really cool just kind of see his progress and talk us through how he got to where he is today. And not being afraid to make those pivots was really cool to see. So that's what I took away from it.
Awesome. Let's not make them wait anymore. Let's get to the episode.
Omid, welcome to the W2 Amigos podcast. How are you doing today, man?
Hey, it's an honor. Thank you for having me as a guest. You know, congratulations on hitting your milestone downloads. I'm excited to be a part of it as you announced it today. So yeah, thank you so much for having me a part of this.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you, man. So I know that it's been a journey with this podcast, so it's happy that we're going to be doing this on this special day with you. So Omid, I know you and I kind of go back a little bit, been working together quite a bit more, but for our listeners, tell a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and why you're here today.
Yeah, sure. I'm here just to have fun. So, but yeah, my name is Omid. I'm from Southern California, father of three. I'm actually investor relations for Alpha Geek Capital. So I secure double-digit cash-on-cash returns for investors. But kind of moving backwards a little bit, I worked a corporate job for 18 years, 16 of those in a managerial type role. And I stumbled upon real estate. And I think part of it was just there was like an external driving force that had me looking for something outside of my job. So that's essentially, what's brought me to real estate. And even within real estate, I've participated in different niches within real estate. But currently, working on like short-term rentals.
Awesome, man. So as you know, we're called the W2 Amigos with the intent of, because we work on W2 and we're investing. So for the folks that are listening in, walk us through a little bit more about your W2 journey and kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, sure. It's going back, I started off just I didn't even know what I wanted to really work into. So I had a business admin degree, and I just showed up to a college recruiting event. I handed my resume over. College recruiter said, "Hey, come work for us." I didn't even really know fully what the job entailed, but I had some bills, and so I was like, "All right, let's do it." So I applied, got a job into the insurance industry. So I worked claims. Within a couple of years, I quickly transitioned into a managerial type role, and I was working. Back then in my early 20s, I had this really like strong hustle mentality to make a lot of money, and that was all that was on my mind. So I just wanted to work hard and really excel. So I just want to kind of test my own skills to see like how I compared to others. And so I ended up managing a big part of like Southern California injury claims. So pretty much like you see those billboards for attorneys, my neck, my back, call Larry H. Parker. And so I eventually transitioned into even a department where I trained a team to negotiate with injury settlements with attorneys. And then eventually I transitioned to a rideshare company. I can't say their name just for like non-disclosure purposes, but it's a major one. And I was in charge of multiple states, injury claims and that, and of course you're dealing with the public, you're training, you're dealing with management, dealing with managing, the company's insurance company's money, as well as like the interest and of like your client and mitigating risk. So did that. And at some point I started realizing, hey, I have my kids and I had a struggle with, I have this problem where I constantly am working beyond probably what I should, because I just want to excel. And I tried to figure out what is the best way for me to kind of get some of my time back, because I'm not a person that's like, oh, I just want to half-ass this responsibility that I have. And so I was just trying to figure out, okay, how can I get some time back? Do I need to create some sort of additional cash flow or side hustle that could generate some money, where then at some point I'm not dependent on this job, but also it can, initially it was just to fund my lifestyle, but then eventually became a way to replace my income.
So I have some follow-ups here, because it sounds like you had a very successful career. I mean, we don't meet a lot of people that have to sign NDAs. That typically means it's a pretty big deal, which is awesome. How did you change that mindset from applying it all to work? Because work is comfortable. You're a father. There's multiple mouths depending on you. How do you transition that mindset to say, okay, I got to do the W-2 to now let me get into another lane and kind of do both at the same time?
So, yeah, I think COVID was really like a blessing in disguise for a lot of people, because you're put in a position where you're working at home and you're reassessing your priorities, and you're probably interacting with people that are closer into your inner tribe. So your, multiple social groups became smaller and smaller. And so I had to really revisit, okay, this is pretty cool that I get to like take my kids to school. This is pretty cool that I get to spend time with them, because before I would wake up early, they would be asleep. I get to work. I come back, I pick them up. We're in a rush to, feed them, get them, ready for bed. And there's not really that quality time that I had. And so it really got me to assess, okay, if I've been putting all these hours to move up in the company, can I shift 10 hours of that and put that into some sort of education or side hustle? So that side hustle ended up becoming real estate. So what I did was I think within your education journey, there's just like so many resources out there, and that in itself can be very overwhelming. When you think about, okay, there's podcasts and there's books, and then somebody's saying they're making money here and making money there, and then there's YouTube, and then there's meetups, and so what do you do? And so for me, like, I don't have a lot of time, and I'm like always about like Cliff Notes. Give me the Cliff Notes version. I just want to learn on the surface. So for me, it was join a mastermind. So I joined a mastermind in a niche that I'm not even in, and that involved like apartment syndication. So I joined it, but what it did was it allowed me to network with people across the country that I would have never networked with, high net worth people, and then there became other groups so there was an accountability group, and this accountability group really led me to time blocking and creating time specifically for learning about real estate, but it also exposed me to somebody who I could learn from, who ended up introducing me to short-term rentals. And then, fast forwarding that, 2 years later, through a partnership with other parties, that allowed me to kind of scale up while doing the W-2. But for me, I wanted to maintain like my performance and standing in my W-2. And so I used to wake up at 5 a.m., get to work. Then it became 4:30. Then it became 4 o'clock. And it got to a point where it was like I was waking up at 3:30 to fulfill my responsibilities on both the real estate side as well as the my W-2 job. And so at that point, I was getting kind of at a crossroads where it was like, okay, I got to choose one or the other. So either I got to delegate my tasks for real estate or my W-2. And I love my W-2. Like the W-2, I would go back to it. It's a great company that I worked for. But I think the deciding factor was, okay, I have flexibility to create my own schedule and spend more time with my kids. So that really, and especially they're like young, where maybe later down the line, I could put a lot more, not that I'm not putting enough time into like what I'm doing now, but it just gave me flexibility where I'm like, okay, I can time block these times for my kids. And it's worked out well. Like for me, I'm probably in the best shape I've been in since high school. I spend more time with the kids. I'm coaching my kids' basketball team and soccer team. And, I'm just trying to balance, of course, it's like a balancing challenge in general. Like when you think about children, wife, whatever job responsibilities you have, sleep, health. And, I always think about like all these little pies of like your life and how can you create the most balanced allotment of your time to fulfill those responsibilities. And of course, that's like it's always changing, but this is kind of where I'm at now, I guess. And in my journey is like, I feel like I'm more balanced than I've been in the past, where before it was like all career and, some of these relationships I like, neglected.
So there's a couple things I wanted to highlight. So for our listeners, because everyone always, especially in the real estate investment space and the financial independence space, it's like the job is villainized. And there's a couple things you did I want to just call out for the listeners. You didn't throw away your W-2's performance. You said, hey, let me fraction off some hours. Maybe instead of 125%, you're giving 105%, which is more than enough to excel at your job. Let me get 10, 15 hours a week to go about my learning and education so I can work on my own thing in service of my goals. You aligned it to what's your goal right now? Your goal was to to grow, was to understand how to get more time back. And I think that was all in service to your why. I think that's the thing that I think is really cool just through the story, Omid, is you are highlighting what's most important, because I want to be a father and I want to be a damn good father. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, if you don't follow me on Instagram, this dude is out here coaching soccer teams, coaching basketball teams, crushing Orange Theory workouts. He's got a balance. And it got to that point to where you had to make that decision to leave because you wanted to continue to build a balance, but you made your W-2 that angel investor. You said, hey, I'm going to put this to work for me to build me the stability that I can leave and then still take care of my family and be the responsible father and husband that I want to be, versus I'm just going to bounce out and potentially put my family at jeopardy, which is something that I think a lot of investors, they're like, oh my God, I can't do that. There's no way. So I'm not even going to try. And you can start by doing little inches along the way. You don't have to go and immediately quit your job the next day when you decide you want to be a real estate investor.
Yeah, and I think for me, like I experienced FOMO really bad. I think that's always been like, for me, it's just, okay, like when I started my career, it's, oh, I want to move up because this person's moving up. So I have this like competitive spirit. Oh, this person's going out. I want to go out. I want to have fun. Oh, this person just invested in a house. I want to invest in a house. And so, I think we can get into kind of this like mental challenge or game where you're just comparing yourself with others. And, I would advise the listeners, like, really think about, write down what it is that matters to you. Like, pick a top 5 and really concentrate on those things so you can kind of ignore all the noise, because especially with social media nowadays, it's, I still do this comparison game, and I think, I'm trying to be better at it. But I think part of me, it's like, okay, I have this competitive spirit and I want to get the best of all worlds. And how do you secure that? And, you just do it in stages. And so even, within the W-2, is a great vehicle to leverage, to invest in whatever it is that you want to do. And some people use they put their percentage into their 401ks or they set aside money for stocks, real estate, whatever their investment vehicle is. Just really think about how to prioritize, what matters to you.
So, Omid, obviously we know where your portfolio is at. Before we do a portfolio overview and kind of hear everything and where your investing journey has come, how did you become educated in your specific niche? We know you're in short-term rentals. You started with a mastermind that was completely unrelated, which is not an uncommon story. How did you get the education you needed to feel comfortable to start pulling the trigger on investments?
Yeah. So I think for me, like, and this is something I always advise, like the listeners, think about like being as resourceful as possible when you're in a W-2, because again, you're limited on time to a degree. And I've talked to some investors. They listened to 1 million podcasts. They read so many books. They underwrote 1 million deals, but they never really like took the step to actually, their risk tolerance was very low. And I think that prevented them. 2 years later, they never invested in anything, even though they're more educated than I am. So I would say, like, really find one person or 2 people that you can trust, that you can leverage their expertise. And you really want to have like a soundboard or somebody that you can kind of lean on to help you pull the trigger on something. So it's really make the commitment, find that friend. So for me, like, there's 2 people in particular that I built a relationship with. And again, everybody has different strengths and different lenses that they look through, and so they had different perspectives. But really, one person had the proof of concept. So I'm not about reinventing the wheel. So the person that I his name is Alex Sabio. He had the proof of concept. He went and he's like, hey, I love this place. I'm making all this money. This is the numbers. This is how I did it. Okay, cool. Show me. And then he's like, yeah, this is where it is. This is the contact. Great. So I leveraged his resources as far as like the realtor, and he did a lot of research, but he also pulled the trigger. So we went ahead and we pulled the trigger. So that was like the first market. The second market, it was, my other partner. So my other partner, he's like, hey, if you look at vacation rental destinations, look at the past 10 years and see if there's a upward trend with visitation in this area nobody's talking about. And so why don't we invest in this place? And this place ended up being Joshua Tree. And again, Joshua Tree is not on my radar. That's not my scene. I'm not a desert person. I'm a resort person. Give me like a pina colada. Give me some, not even just a beach. I want a beach that's like turquoise water. Like that's paradise to me. So like,
give me a swim up pool, so I can swim up
yep.
to the bar, get myself a blue drink or something,
Yes, 100%. And when I think about biases, you have different influencers. Some will say, buy where you want to go visit, right? There's an emotional component to that. And then there's the influencers who are, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers if the numbers make sense. Because the reality is, how many have I even stayed in a lot of these Airbnbs? No, I've never even like had a time to, because I've been working on the business. So it's this particular market, the numbers made sense, and we ended up scaling in that particular market and became a very popular market. So, those are things that I think I thought about and I did while I was in the W-2. And I thought about, okay, so what can I do to bring value to the person who has maybe a little bit of time freedom? And so it was qualifying for a loan. It was doing some bookkeeping where it's you can do it at any time of the day. So I was taking on tasks like building relationships. For me, it has always been a strength. So building relationships with the cleaner and the handyman and sourcing like some staffing. And so just thinking about what strengths you have, how you can leverage those, finding somebody who has something you don't have and leveraging them and their strengths and building those partnerships. So I think part of it is understanding what value you can bring and then finding somebody that can complement, what you need. And by doing that, you put yourself in a position to shorten that learning window. And I think that's the challenge, because I think some people try to think that they need to do everything. And the problem is, if you want to try to do everything, you're never going to do anything. So, and I've seen a lot of investors.
Omid,
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Did you feel like any less of an investor by leveraging those partnerships, partnering up with people? Because to your point, a lot of people will do all their research, will do their homework, will listen to the podcast, and feel like, yes, they have to take care of everything by themselves to reinvent the wheel. Did you feel like less of an investor when you partnered up with people?
It's so some people are going to challenge your credibility, and they're going to say, hey, well, you didn't do this part of the business, or you didn't do that part of the business. But I think from like a business perspective, to scale and to leverage other people's strengths, it allows you to kind of build a business faster. So for me, I think and you learn along the way. So I think for me, my education is ongoing. I'm still learning, but it's asking questions from the people who are the experts and learning from them, because I'm not going to be the expert. My partner, he's the expert at processes and software, and I'm not good at that. Like, just tell me what to do. Who do I need to talk to? I'm great at that. No problem. So it just, and then I'm also good at being resourceful and learning from others, because through those relationships, because again, it's, there's only so much that you can learn. And, a lot of people who are on the sidelines are also the ones that think they need to do everything and want the perfect scenario that doesn't exist. So you just got to, kind of jump into it. And I think it also reduces the risk when you're, in it with somebody else. And there's also a higher level of accountability when you're in it with somebody else as well.
Yeah, I honestly think it's like the easy way out. It's like the cop out to say, I need to do it alone because, your ego is so big you want to go about it alone, or you can't trust anyone else. And it's like you'd rather be a master of a couple things working with another master of your opposing skill set, so you could be excellent versus being a jack of all trades and getting nothing done. I mean, you talked about it earlier. You don't like half-ass anything. You'd rather whole-ass something, and then rather than half-ass a bunch of other stuff.
Right. For sure.
I think that's super important to look at too. And I think, with you and you're forming your partnerships, I'm sure you looked at people and you're like, all right, you're really good at that. I'm not so good at that. Now we can complement each other. Cause I know X and I did the same thing. Like we could
Yep.
not be the most opposite of people in terms of trying to execute a business. And
Yeah.
I think it's good because it helps us out. So then we don't try to
Yep.
step on each other's toes and then doing a bunch of double work when something that's super important is not getting done, because we're trying to do the same thing at the same time. And I'm sure you found that relationship with the partners you have.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. So it's worked out really nice. And I think I'm posting something on Instagram today about partnerships. So, I of course like communication and a lot of those things and values and commitment and dedication to success. But I think when you find people in the real estate space, they've already done a lot of those. They've already been successful in whatever they've been doing as far as like in their W-2s. And I know, I think I saw one of the clips that you guys had. And I think it was like something along, like the message was something like that. Like you're going to find like people are already successful and that skill translates, whatever the skill set they have translates well into real estate. It's just a matter of getting familiar with it. And I think that the biggest hurdle is really like risk tolerance and the unknown. And sometimes you just got to get your feet wet. And, sometimes you're going to fall on your face. But at least, you get your feet wet and you keep learning along the way and stay consistent and, things will eventually work themselves out.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know. I mean, people always like, oh, I don't know how to redo a flooring. No one knew how. No one was born out the womb knowing how to lay, laminate flooring. So you just got to go and figure it out. So, Omid, obviously you're at a position now where you're doing the investing thing full time. You're working with Alpha Key Capital. You're getting some really great and cool things going. I get to see that kind of via some friendships that I've had over the time that I've been at my W-2, which is fantastic. So tell us, what does your portfolio look like now? And then walk us through how you got there and how that scale allowed you to leave your W-2.
Yeah. So I'm invested in, I would say like 20 plus short-term rentals. So I think, and then also I'm invested in apartment syndication. So I'm invested in 3 separate apartment syndications across 2 markets, both in Texas, Dallas, and Houston. So I know some people in the multifamily space like to throw out like doors, but so it's 702 doors on the multifamily space. But it's more of a like a I think it depends on like your strategy. So it depends on like what strategy you're looking for and what you're trying to target. But I think a lot of people, what they end up doing if they end up sticking with real estate, what's typical is, I actually started off with house hacking. So when I first bought my personal residence, I house hacked. We had,
Let's
there
go,
you go.
right here. You
there
see
you
the
go.
shirt? Yeah.
There
You see
go.
the shirt? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like it's stages and we bought a personal residence and we, meaning my wife and I at the time, and before house hacking was a like a term, one of my coworkers, again, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just being resourceful and learning from others. So my coworker, he had a 4-bed and he was renting out, or he had a 5-bed, he was renting out 4 bedrooms. His whole mortgage was being paid and then some. And so I wanted to replicate that, but not to the extreme. So we have a 4-bed. And at the time we rented out 2 rooms consistently for 6 years up until we had kids. And, we can do a whole other podcast about stories of like house hacking as you probably have some, but we did that. And I also, I invested in a long-term rental out of state. It failed because it was in the wrong part of the cycle. So that was in Vegas. That was like in 2005 and in 2008. It was like, of course the market tanked, the rents tanked. So I bought my personal residence and I let that property go. Then I invested in a long-term rental that was a BRRRR in Louisiana, and that was a loser because it was in a flood zone, which we didn't even know what a flood zone was. So killed all the cash flow. And then eventually, got into the short-term rental niche. But I think again, it's tiers. So like somebody who's like in an early part of their stage where they may not have a lot of cash. I mean, there's so many different strategies, but house hacking, I know people are doing the BRRRR STRs. I don't know if that's like a new term, but like, buy a, short-term rental that needs some rehab. And, I think that's like where we are in the cycle. That's probably a more safe type of investment. And, but again, I think a lot of it is timing. And so it's just, I think it just depends, and being able to pivot. And I think that's, I guess the lesson I've learned is learning to pivot at the right times through your research. And I would say, like, for me, the way I do my research is through the Facebook groups, through interacting, whether it's at meetups or in the Facebook groups, to understand and get the most up-to-date information. Because sometimes podcasts can be delayed. Sometimes that's like, that was yesterday's news. And so, I think sometimes you just got to get it like firsthand from people that you're talking to, et cetera, et cetera.
Omi, do you think that your property that you had back in '05 in Vegas, then also in Louisiana, like those experiences, do you think that made you a better investor to where you're at now because of those two properties?
100%. Like, the property in Las Vegas, it was literally like, I just looked in the MLS, picked one, and said, that's the one I want. And so, of course, like, we talk about like take action, but that's probably not the right way to take action. So when I think about taking action, it's now there's underwriting tools and there's analysis around the market, and is it priced appropriately, and are the rents going to cover the mortgage, and what's your targeted maybe returns, that like cash on cash returns, or if you're going for a bottom line cash flow number. So I think I've had to learn that along the way. Even like, where we were in the cycle. I think with my home, my personal residence, it was I purchased at the bottom. It was a short sale, so literally I waited 6 months, and it's worth double now. I mean, I think I bought it for like $561 in 2010. Now I think a house down the street sold for like 1.1. So it's it's crazy, like timing, and and then the Las Vegas place, it wasn't a lot. It was a small condo, but I bought it for like 205 at the time, and then I think at the bottom it was like 85,000 or 80,000, and so again, and rents were at 1,100 and they dropped to like 600. So again, it's crazy how like timing and having the right analysis will allow you to kind of analyze things better. Like even like the Louisiana property, predicting the rents. So we looked at the rents, and in my head I was like, okay, I think it's 1350, and then I think like my partner, he underwrote it for like 1450. It ended up being for 1350, but I'm more conservative. So I just but then we didn't count for the insurance, which was like 3,000 a year, and that essentially was a cash flow. So and then we didn't look at like that it was near apartments, and that if you have a property that's in the right zip code, but maybe next to apartments, it might not be very desirable, and that there's potentially a crime element, even though it's like a B class area. I think it was more of like a C minus, because of like where it was located within like the B neighborhood. So just all these little lessons you learn along the way, and that's part of the process. You just got to do it.
So what do you think led to your success within the short-term rental space compared to those first couple of deals? Did you do anything different with like building your team or building relationships?
Yeah, so I think one of the person that I particularly chose to kind of like learn from, he already had a lot of experience. So he already had a lot of similar failures. So he purchased a long-term rental that failed. He went through bankruptcy. He had multiple, I think he had like 8+ long-term rentals across different markets that were doing really well, like the Huntsville and the Ohio's and the Texas. And so he was just repositioning. And so I was learning about like how he was repositioning and doing financial planning. So I feel like that was like next level, where a lot of people just like, okay, I just want to get like my feet wet. This particular person had already gone through a lot of different cycles and stages, and they already had like a financial planner as far as like what they were doing. And the short-term rental strategy at the time was just more for like a tax strategy play, in addition to the cash flow play. So, but not a lot of people were in that space or had that kind of education. I think at the time it was just like things didn't blow up as they do now in social media, where like, one person doesn't, everybody knows. Like, back then, like it wasn't really talked about too much. And so it's crazy how just even within a couple years, how that's changed and how information just travels way faster than it did before. But I think it's sometimes people talk about coaching programs or having the right mentor, but if you can learn the right skill set and from the right person, that will translate really well in terms of like how you execute long term.
I mean, yeah, there's a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far,
Yep.
go together. I mean, I think
Yep.
that applies to this situation the most too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's also okay too when you realize, like, like to your point, there's so many people out there that you can talk to, so much content. If you're starting to talk to somebody, it's probably okay too if you see that either your goals don't align or like their style is not conducive to yours.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to say that it's probably not going to be a good fit, and kind of move on for that, right? Because I feel like sometimes people get a little bit stuck with just when they start talking to somebody about, like, if they get their first property together and they realize this partnership is not really going to work out. How do I break up with this person? Right. And you might have to do that in order for you to continue to grow, because the last thing you want is to be in a toxic relationship with somebody too. If things aren't working out correctly the way you want to, feel like you're kind of stuck there too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think it's like, there's always a honeymoon stage with like any relationship, and like just like a marriage or any long-term relationship, you have to work at it. And some people's values change, their priorities change, and how do you, set those expectations up front so you guys can kind of grow together, and that's very important. But yeah, it's it's trial and error, and some people are just better at that intuition or knowing, and versus others. But if you can, even bounce those ideas off somebody else, as far as like what we said earlier, as far as like complementary skill sets, I think it's it's a great way to get started.
Yep. Good stuff, man. Well, hey, Omid, now we're going to transition over to our standard questions that we ask all our guests. And if you've already listened to one or two episodes, you know that Nick saves the best questions there for the end. So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and kick it off with the first one.
Sure.
So what is one piece of action a listener can take after listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I think it's like, really, you got to be honest and do a self-assessment of what it is that you want. Because I think some people get like, is the shiny object syndrome, or
Yeah, signing out. Yeah. Oh, I want to go do that. Go do this.
yeah. So, but then are they honest about putting in the time and effort? There's no easy way. There's no like shortcut. So I think I talk to a lot of investors, and there's varying levels of like commitment levels to wanting to like be successful. And I think you got to really, again, so I would say like the one thing is self-assess and be honest. And if you're willing to put in the time, and if you are willing to put the effort, there's so many opportunities out there, and it's not just short-term rentals. There's so many like niches within real estate where you can do really, really well. But you do have to put in the time, and you have to be uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable going to meetups. You have to be uncomfortable making decisions on not having all the right information. You have to, it's part like art, part science sometimes when you're, pulling the trigger on certain things. So if you're comfortable with that, sky's the limit. Real estate, there's so much opportunity, and it's not necessarily always a safe thing up front, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. You can be better at being effective in doing it.
So for question number 2, I mean, we got to ask about the W-2 again. So it's kind of in the name. What is one thing that your W-2 allowed you to do in terms of achieving your financial goals?
Yeah, I think we all want to like make a living. So like that W-2, provides a paycheck. So then at the moment you receive that paycheck, what do you do with the paycheck? So when I first, I've always been very like fiscally conservative with spending. I've always think about, okay, what are like my actual necessities? And so when I first graduated, all my friends, we all got jobs, but they all got the BMW and the Lexus. I had my 98 Civic hatchback stick shift, and I pretty much drove it through. All my employees had better cars than me. I drove it up until I drove for 10 years of like after I graduated college. So I'm trying to think of the timeline, but pretty much the only reason I sold it is my wife made me sell it when my first son was about to be born. And she's like, "Hey, you're too old for this. And you need to get
I'm not putting my son in that car."
Yeah, pretty much. She's like, "Okay, we need to get a minivan." So I have to like put on the big boy pants and get a more family oriented vehicle. But I think that the message I'm trying to portray is kept the expenses low, and then leverage the W-2 to qualify for the loans. And leverage is like a really big thing within real estate. So leveraging the income. And so I qualified for loans by myself. My wife qualified loans by herself. So that way we could leverage our income as much as possible for these like cash flowing assets. And then that, whether you want to use it for lifestyle, which originally that was like when we were house hacking, the house hacking money was really for vacations. So it was like, all right, let's set this aside and we're going to go on vacations and we're going to have fun. And so this is our vacation money. So, but, keeping expenses low, leveraging that W-2, buying assets, and, in theory, having those assets eventually replace your income. And, that's kind of, where we decided, hey, it's my W-2 was replaced. And so we're like, okay, let's, more money is not necessarily going to change our quality of life, but what will change our quality of life will be me stepping away from the grind of a managerial job and spending more time with the family. And so that was part of, I don't know, like financial or family sort of goals. And so that's kind of like, where I am today.
Did you upgrade your car? Are you still rocking the minivan?
Yeah, you know what? We have a minivan and we have a 4Runner. So, but those are the two cars. My wife had, so my wife had a Honda as well. So she had an Accord from college, and same thing. We both drove the same cars, and I think she drove it like 10 years after, graduating, somewhere around that time. Like, so we, we've had these cars now for about 8 years. So we're close to like figuring out, okay, we might have to at some point trade for another minivan, or we'll see. Like it's
maybe
funny
get a Cybertruck.
Yeah,
the Cybertruck's coming out soon. Might need to get a little Tessie.
That's true, right? Yeah.
Seen the new minivans nowadays? Like those things actually look.
No, they're badass.
Oh yeah, like
they're nice.
Some of those now, like the Toyota Siennas, like clutch.
Yeah, for sure.
For all the listeners, X just became a dog dad, and he's already trying to buy a minivan. What the hell's going on in Minneapolis?
They're so practical. It's just like you can't hate on them, and but I know like most of our neighborhood, they have Suburbans. Like it's a very like suburban type of neighborhood, so they're spending, I don't know, 80, 100K, and we're like, we're gonna do our minivan at the 40, 50K, and kind of keep it consistent. So we'll probably get another one at some point and trade out the one we have for another one.
Meanwhile, all those parents are watching you coach the kids' soccer and basketball teams. Like, how does Omid have all this time to live in this expensive house?
Yeah.
And what the fuck?
Yeah.
But then they go out and they buy $100,000 Suburban blacked out, you know?
That's so funny. It's ironically, we talked about like the, lifestyle creep, and it's one of my buddies, his sister, the husband is a doctor, and she is a pharmacist. So she's a part-time pharmacist now at this point, but literally they live paycheck to paycheck. They live in OC. They have the new cars. They have all the toys. They have the big mortgage, and, one, they don't have a lot of time. They have all their toys, but then, it's interesting. And I feel like a lot of people kind of live that way. And so, I'm glad you guys have this podcast to kind of get people to maybe think about their priorities around long term and, what really matters. And I think it's easy to say, oh, I want the nice new thing and I want to spend more money because I have more money. But it does take a little bit of discipline to kind of, ignore what's going on in the outside and keep up with the Joneses and take care of what matters.
Sweet, man. All right, Omid. So next question, what's one thing that you would have done differently with your W-2 income?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, so as my income grew, I would put more money into my 401k. So, so this was very like traditional type of like conservative investing. So at some point I was like putting in like a quarter of my salary and then rolling that, then when you hit the cap, then rolling that over into like a Roth IRA. And but I think I would have, if I would have started real estate earlier, meaning taking more risk sooner, I would have probably rolled some of that money from the 401k and being liquid and then invested that into real estate. So I would say that's probably what I would have done differently at this point. But in general, it was pretty conservative to begin with. So as far as like how I spent my money.
Perfect. Are you ready for the crazy question I have, Omid?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
All right, so the Powerball just got hit. Someone just won $1 billion after taxes. All right, so let's pretend that person was you. I want to know, you have 3 kids and you have a wife.
Yeah.
What are each of them getting when you win the Powerball? What's the first thing? It can't be like a house for their retirement or whatever. Like, what's the fun thing you're buying each of the people in your lives as soon as you hit that Powerball?
For me, it's more like I want to teach my kids to value experiences. So like I forgot there's a guy, his name is Jesse Giesler, I think is his name, but he really talks about building an experience resume. So I just want to build an experience resume. So I feel like it would really involve like traveling the world. I think for all of them, because I think you learn so much about yourself and what's in front of you by seeing the world or seeing the world through like others' eyes. Like I think a lot of times people don't leave the country. They stay, in their little space, or they go to the same destination, the same Airbnb, and so I would highly encourage them to have some, either like a cruise that goes around the world or some sort of flight, but I'd say something along those lines. So I don't know if that's boring, but that's for me. I think that's like the gift that I would give, is like the gift of travel.
You got to give them that and then a bunch of Nerf guns so they can shoot each other on the cruise. And let you and your wife go get some drinks.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So, Omid, we know that our listeners, they're typically pretty early into their journey. You obviously promised them double-digit cash-on-cash returns with investments working with you. Where are people going to find out more about you? How can they connect with you?
Sure. You can find me on IG, Omid, the Rad Investor. So that's OMID, the Rad Investor. Or you can find me on alphageekcapital.com. So you can find me one of those 2 places. Come check. Yeah. Like you said, come check out my videos. Trying to be a little bit more active than I have in the past. And, I just put random things on there, but really the intent is lifestyle, is to reflect kind of like some of the things I do, like on the real estate side, but also on the personal side. So, hopefully that, people enjoy that content.
Well, I know we enjoyed the interview a ton. We're going to do a recap after and just kind of share with the listeners some of the things that we took away. But Omid, thanks for the time. It was really inspirational. I think your story about leveling up in the W-2, investing and getting financially independent to then leave to find that balance and success in life is fantastic. So thanks for sharing with us, and we'll have to have you back on soon.
Can I do a quick video of us so I can put it as a story? Like, do you mind?
Hell yeah, you can. Okay,
hold on. Let me see. Okay.
I'm gonna have to take a photo as well too. I mean,
okay, here we go.
That was my job.
Let's go. Let's go.
Woo!
Let's go.
All right, and here's one for our gram though too. Ready? All right, this is my gym selfie or my gym selfie that Nick likes to do.
Yep.
Sweet.
Cool, man.
Too. Sorry. I just got to do a quick pick.
Very good. Let's get the house hacker in there. There we go.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Got my double chin in there and everything. All right, guys. That was the very rad and the very much investor Omid. I am super pumped right now. X, what do you want to call out for our listeners on this one?
What I want to call out, he talks about the power of partnerships. So he was able to scale up quite a bit. He talked about having at least 20 plus short-term rentals. He's an LP in 3 different separate apartment syndications. So he did that all through the power of partnership, identifying that he didn't have to do everything by himself and leveraging others around him that ultimately allowed him to scale his portfolio. So I think that's a great takeaway for all of us, right? Is you don't have to do it alone. It's okay to take up partners to kind of build your portfolio and then start your real estate journey. What about you, Nick?
So the thing I liked is he talked about educating himself. You know, he was working 65 hours a week at his job and he cut that back to like 50 and then took 10 or 15 and invested that into his own personal education. So he knew he wouldn't have a ton of time to do 1,000 hours of podcasts, listening and Audible and books like, you know, we did because we had time. So he went and joined a mastermind straight up, which I haven't heard a lot of people do. And it was completely unrelated to what made him very successful in real estate. But I think it just changed his mindset and allowed him to educate himself in the way that worked for him, why I think this journey of Omid's is so interesting because it's very personal to him. It's a lot of uniqueness, and personal finance and real estate investing is personal. And I think that he definitely demonstrates that you got to pick what's best for you and then go full throttle on those things. So yeah, just a phenomenal episode today, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it as well.
Do you ever notice that it's funny? So you're very insightful, very wise, and always pull through like the life lessons and the teaching moments where I'm just like, business, yes, this is what I learned, right? All strategy, all financing of that sort. So it's a good balance, man.
Yeah, he also talked about that, finding partners that fit your gaps and you fit their gaps. And actually, we fit each other like puzzle pieces, bro. It's very romantic to say that. But yes, yeah. Also, too, like I'm in the phase of about to have a fucking kid one day, so I got to worry about that shit. And I got to be all like fatherly and stuff. You know, you're close. You know, you're a lot closer than I think. You know, a lot of people want to admit out here. But
well, I already have a kid right now. It's a 2-year-old pit bull, so that's what I'm working through right now.
That is true. Yeah. In the episode, you'll hear, obviously, X was talking about being a dog dad and then getting a fucking minivan. So he's already there. You might have twins next year. Who knows?
That's not the type of scaling up that I'm talking about. Okay, guys?
It's true. All right, guys. Hope you all enjoyed the episode. As always, we are your W2 Amigos. Please check us out on Instagram at the W2 Amigos. Same thing with TikTok and YouTube. We're actually starting to post some videos now that we have that recording, both on TikTok and YouTube. So some pretty exciting stuff. My name's Nick Coulter, guys. Hit me up at the 5 Family on Instagram and TikTok, and then let me know if you need any help with Southern California real estate.
Yep, and I'm Xavier Marin _ at Instagram and TikTok. That's where you guys can find me. All right, guys. Talk to you soon.